Central ideal of secession is the essence of anarchy. Just one of the arguments against secession that President Lincoln made in his first inaugural address only 4 months after seven southern states had seceded from the Union. The Republican who made his party the party of Lincoln, concluding that when secession is allowed to happen, anarchy or despotism in some form is all that is left. Our fourth story in the countdown, the Republican governor of Texas, Rick Perry, seeming to prefer anarchy and despotism. Governor Perry joining in today's teabagging and in false outrage over federal tax dollars that he is more than happy to spend. Governor Perry telling teabaggers in Austin this morning that if any in the crowd were right-wing extremists, quote, "I'm with you," adding that Texans, quote, "will not be ignored." Quote, "We are sending a very clear message that we won't stand for our pockets to be picked, our children's future to be mortgaged, and our rights to be taken away. We will not be ignored." Not so much ignored as perhaps ignorance when you consider that Texas gets back 88 cents out of every federal tax dollar it sends to Washington. In comparison, Minnesota gets back just 46 cents, with only half of its Senate contingent at present. True taxation without representation. Delaware only 42 cents, less than half of what Texas gets back. Then there is the $17 billion that Texas received after President Obama signed the stimulus package into law. That is billion with a B. None of these facts stopping Governor Perry from visiting Glenn Beck country when he threw his support behind a resolution declaring the sovereignty of Texas.
I believe the federal government has become oppressive. I believe it's become oppressive in its size, its intrusion into the lives of its citizens, and its interference with the affairs of our state. We think it's time to draw the line in the sand and tell Washington that no longer are we going to accept their oppressive hand in the state of Texas. There is a point in time where you stand up and say enough is enough.
Time now to call in Jim Moore, Huffington Post contributor, co-author of Bush's Brain. Mr. Moore, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
Governor Perry obviously stopped just short of endorsing secession and told reporters today that Texans might at some point get so fed up that they would want to secede. But for now, he sees no reason to do that. But during the speech today in Austin, while he spoke, there were several shouts from the audience of secede. Is the governor making too subtle a distinction when it appears that secession is what many of the people listening to him are hearing anyway?
And that's exactly what this governor is saying. He's trying to stir up his sort of radical fringe to get them excited about him as governor. You know, Keith, in defense of Texas, though, you have to remember that we've given the world great writers, artists, philanthropists, business people out in the Silicon Hills, not far west of here. There are people in the tech industry doing great things. Texas has done a lot of very good stuff for this country, but people turn on their television and unfortunately they see this clownish hirsute governor of ours doing these silly things and saying these foolish things that are a bit of an embarrassment to all of us down here. Now, just as a bit of context, as the previous governor was leaving here to go to Washington, there was a joke making the rounds in the Texas Capitol Press Corps that his car had a bumper sticker that said, "If you think I was bad, wait till you see the guy who replaces me." So that's what you're looking at right now.
Après-moi le déluge. This report from Homeland Security that concluded that lone wolves and small terrorist cells embracing violent right-wing extremist ideology are the most dangerous domestic terrorism threat in the United States. To your point of stirring up the more right-wing of his followers, with Governor Perry and with Congresswoman Bachmann and other people like that, has this moved beyond mere political rhetoric to something they could not control, don't have a sense of how irresponsible it might, what sort of irresponsible levels it might reach?
I think, Keith, it's actually transcended irresponsibility already. It wasn't that long ago, a little over 10 years ago, in this state that we had a separatist movement called the Republic of Texas, which gained more and more political support, and then the leaders of it, a very smart guy, by the way, named Rick McLaren, who is basing his arguments almost on the same things that Rick Perry is saying, took a group of followers out in the Davis Mountains into West Texas. This ended up in a week-long standoff with the police. People died. There was a gunfight, and Mr. McLaren is now doing life in prison, and yet now we're seeing our governor saying the same thing. It's fomenting a kind of unrest, a civil unrest. It's just utterly irresponsible for a governor to do this kind of thing.
And how much of this desire for sovereignty is due to the primary challenge that he may get from Senator Hutchison?
I don't think there's any doubt that that's got a lot to do with this. What you're talking about is someone who is facing a tough race, and if he can find some grassroots thing to argue and energize people, and of course the whole subtext of this is about the current administration, and he's going to be the best guy to deal with the present administration. But he's got a fight on his hands, and a lot of people think that he's going to be tossed out on his ear.
Jim Moore, the editor of MooreThink.com and co-author of Bush's Brain. To paraphrase the governor of South Carolina before the Civil War, Texas, too small for a country, too big for an insane asylum. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Keith.